let's head straight to the news. Now, what would have been a shutdown of the economy was averted as the federal government and organized labor reached a truce on the consequential adjustment of the minimum wage in the early hours of this morning.
As agreed by the parties, workers on grade level 7 will now have their salaries adjusted by 23.2%, grade level 8 by 20%, grade level 9 by 19%, grade levels 10 to 14 by 16%. Grade levels 15 to 17 by 14%. The federal government is to transmit the collective bargaining agreement to states for implementation.
The Trade Union Congress of Nigeria has described the figures arrived at the minimum wage negotiation with the federal government as a win-win situation.
The TUC in a statement added that although it was a rough road, but it was happy that an agreement has finally been reached. The group says the agreement has addressed some salary discrepancies that the workers have agitated so much about.
Earlier, we spoke to TVC News correspondent Govt Issa, who has been following the negotiations.
We had the federal government and the organized labor coming to the table once again. At this time, not about fighting for minimum wage, but about ensuring that it is implemented and that every worker benefits from this new minimum wage. And so that has been the challenge between the two of them, a threat by the organized labor to embark on a nationwide strike, or that it will not guarantee industrial harmony. Of course, was what forced the government to this latest round of negotiations. We have seen now that at the end of it all parties, of course, were happy with what we saw. Labour was very happy that it was able to force the government to this, and even the government, of course, was also happy that at the end of it all, the economy was not grounded. So basically, both parties are happy now, and so we look forward to the implementation, and knowing fully well that arrears have accumulated, and so we'll see how they will be able to also play this out. The head of service has spoken about the government keen in ensuring that backlog is paid, and Labour is also saying that government will pay the arrears of this minimum wage.
Joining us now is an economist, Hardin Udo. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
It's an honor to be here.
Finally, an agreement has been reached.
Yeah.
Let's get your reaction to this, and is it really a win-win situation?
Well, for those parties that are in negotiation, we'll say yes, it's been a win-win situation. But then, you know, the economist view may be very different.
Okay.
Yeah, and the view that we're taking, or the position we're taking is the salary increment, is it really properly timed for our country as a whole now at the moment? Being that the 18,000 Naira minimum wage has not been fully met with in several states. We're struggling as a country to meet that. And now we have a 66% increment. Now, not just 66% increment to come about the 30,000, right? But then you now have comparative increments across all grade levels for the public sector as a whole. Now, in the private sector, when you're looking at people or canvassing for increment, there's usually a matching marginal productivity rate.
Okay.
So, question is, are we getting the services that we deserve as a people in the country? On what basis are these increments proposed? Now, labor is a factor of production. And so increment in take-home pay of laborers is a direct cost.
Is it?
On the economy. Yeah, it's costing us as a country.
Okay.
We're here at TVC, we're paid salaries, we are producing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's also the profitability of TVC to look at. So on a larger scale, you have the revenue and expenses of a country. So you're paying your salary, you're paying workers' salary to do stuff. Yeah? And you're expecting them to generate revenue with whatever they're doing.
But if you're saying it is ill-timed at this point, the federal government just increased the VAT to 7.5%.
Yeah, it's, you know, again, if you're looking at it from the budgetary perspective, you know, analysts have already pointed out that it's a bit ambitious. The burden of tax is still coming to the people. So you're increasing on the one hand.
Including the federal government workers.
Yeah, including them. Yeah, so in one hand, you're raising the man's salary by 66%. But remember, there's inflation coming to eat into that. Tax on what he's going to consume is also eating into that. So at the end of the day, what's his economic take home?
Okay, so
yes.
It's a whole different ballgame from what any other person is saying. What you're saying is something totally different from every other person saying economist's point of view. But if you also look at the fact that if the tax has been increased to 7.5%, and we were still maintaining 18,000 naira minimum wage, we will still be at the same situation.
Yeah, but don't forget that the government is struggling to generate revenue. They already have a debt issue on their hands. It's rising astronomically. And we're saying that at the last analysis that some researchers undertook, 2/3 of our generated revenue as a country went to recurring expenses, and that is overhead, salaries. So if we're borrowing to pay tax salaries, and we're also taxing people more, and you're increasing the salary, you're still going to be paying salary out of that. Sorry?
What's the solution?
But we're saying that the labor economists, labor as a whole, while they're conversing for the take-home pay of their workers, the economists among them should actually have been driving for more sustainable things for their workers.
Okay.
We're looking at, no one is really speaking about the standard of living of the individual. You're looking at his take-home. Okay. But like I was listening to your newspaper review, people are saying there are no good roads, security is poor, we're hearing kidnappings here and there, there's no security in the system and all of that. You know, so if labor was really caring for the people, they'll be looking towards the standard of, expanding the standard of living for workers in the country, not necessarily monetary-wise. Because inflation is going to sweep out whatever the take-home increment is overall.
All right, thank you very much for talking to us. Hadi Udo, economist.
You're welcome.
To the news now. What would have been a shutdown of the economy was averted as the federal government and organized labor reached a truce on the consequential adjustment of the minimum wage in the early hours of this morning.
As agreed by both parties, workers on grade level 7 will now have their salaries adjusted by 23.2%, grade level 8 by 20%, grade level 9 by 19%, grade levels 10 to 14 by 16%, grade levels 15 to 17 by 14%. The federal government is to transmit the collective bargaining agreement to states for implementation.
Well, the Trade Union Congress of Nigeria, TUC, has described the figures arrived at the minimum wage negotiation with the federal government as a win-win situation.
The TUC, in a statement, added that although it was a rough road, but it is happy that an agreement has finally been reached. The group says the agreement has addressed some salary discrepancies that the workers have agitated so much about.
Earlier, we spoke to TVC News correspondent Jokadisa, who has been following the negotiations.
We had the federal government and the organized labor coming to the table once again. At this time, not about fighting for minimum wage, but about ensuring that it is implemented and that every worker benefits from this new minimum wage. And so that has been the challenge between the two of them, a threat by the organized labor to embark on a nationwide strike, or that it will not guarantee industrial harmony, of course, was what forced the government to this latest round of negotiations. We have seen now that at the end of it all parties, of course, were happy with what we saw. Labour was very happy that it was able to force the government to this, and even the government, of course, was also happy that at the end of it all, the economy was not grounded. So basically, both parties are happy now, and so we look forward to the implementation, and knowing fully well that arrears have accumulated, and so we'll see how they will be able to also play this out. The head of service has spoken about the government keen in ensuring that backlog is paid, and Labour is also saying that government will pay the arrears of this minimum wage.
Joining us now is an economist, Hadi Udo. Good morning. Thank you for joining us on TVC Breakfast. Now, a faction of organized labor, that's the TUC, says that this unique agreement, I'm quoting what it says, will be, as we have promised to build on that by God's grace. That is, they see that the salary increment, the discrepancies and overlapping, all of that has been something that this increment has, addressed, so to speak. And so they are moving forward, they are looking to build on it. Is this something, as an economist, that can be built on, looking at the fact that in 5 years we'll also be looking at another increment?
Yeah. Okay, so that's a fine question. Yeah, there's a lot that can be built on that. That's to answer that question. Well, the question is, what's the nature of what is being built? We had before now the 18,000 naira increment some years back. Before then, there was another increment. And then we're looking in 5 years' time to be another increment. The thing is, Labour will keep asking for more money. But the crux of the matter is that what is the quality of living standards that the Nigerian labor force is currently enjoying? If Labour is going to answer those questions and they are actually going to build around the factors that will improve the standard of living of the Nigerian worker, then yes, it's something to look forward to.
Interesting.
Okay,
so when we say standard of living, we're looking at what's the quality of housing that the average Nigerian worker lives in.
Can afford.
Can afford. I mean, how many of them can have access to mortgages today? Very few. Most of them are living in squalor, if not penury. The 30,000 naira will probably not pay rent in a highbrow area of, say, Lagos State.
Okay, so for Labour now,
Yeah.
rather than asking for pay increase, which will happen every 5 years, what should they do to ensure that workers in Nigeria have a better living standard?
Yeah, they should. I will recommend that for every pressure group, like Labour is no exception, they should have specialists amongst them. If they actually had a Labour economist here, they will actually have advised them in real terms. Because money doesn't solve all of our problems. I mean, you and I may take home a 1 million naira today as take-home pay, and we're battling with power issues at home, we're battling with insecurity at home or around us, we're battling with the poor access to quality of good health, good education and all of that. These are things that the labor unions should be canvassing for.
But now that they are not doing that, so to speak, are there implications to that?
Yeah, there are always implications. You and I are wholesomely not happy people. We're not happy people. I mean, no matter how much you and I have in our pocket, and we don't have access to good life or access to good quality of living, we're wholesomely unhappy people, and we're human beings. So that's what Labour should be thinking of.
All right, Adenudon, we have to leave it at this point. Thank you for your time on TVC Breakfast.